Hi, Becca.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. So, the last time I did this, asking for answers, was with someone about running, um,
Mhm.
and it was really good. So, we've decided to do it again, and this time it's talking about the link between physical and mental health.
Yeah, great.
I just would love if you could tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I'm a psychologist. I work in Glasgow for the NHS, and I work in physical health settings. So, kind of that relationship between mental health and physical health is my passion professionally, and it's also something that I'm very passionate about in my personal life. So, as well, I train with you, as you obviously know. So yeah, that's something that I work on for myself, my physical health, and I think that's probably the most of the introduction for me.
Yeah, I love that. So Becca, also you train with me in the gym,
Yeah.
and I love that. So yeah, I've known you for a good while, but it's been such a pleasure training you in the studio as well. Um, so yeah, so this conversation I'm hoping is helpful to those who want to understand a bit more about what the whole self-care, look after yourself, like feel good is. Um, in my role as a personal trainer and like a gym owner, you know, I've spent a lot of time trying to motivate people, make people feel good. And on a personal level, I get good feedback saying, "You're so motivational, like thanks so much. I feel really motivated when I'm with you." I know that for clients, sometimes it can be that when they leave the gym, how do they continue to keep that like mental well-being up so that they continue to have the motivation to do exercise, feel good, and then do that self-care thing. So as much as what I would say self-care, I tell people make sure that you rest after your sessions, take a bath, relax, chill out. You've been doing loads. And as much as I preach, it's also been a learning curve for me to learn to do some rest and and quiet time. And yeah, I've noticed even through focusing on my own personal mental well-being, um, through CBT therapy, timeline therapy, and then more recently, just different books and journaling, how it's affected my physical state and mental state as a whole in a really
Mm.
positive way. So I found that through my own journey that I think has been quite on its own path, but I'd love if we could talk a little bit more even about how we can improve our mental well-being. So first question I've got
Definitely.
is, what is self-compassion?
Self-compassion, yeah. So self-compassion is in the kind of more dictionary definition as we use it as therapists. It's a sensitivity to suffering and to distress, and it's a commitment to alleviating that suffering and distress, and trying to prevent it in the future. So it's about understanding that as humans we all experience negatives, we all experience suffering, we all struggle with our mental health. That is just a normal part of being a human. We are all going to run into it. Even the most evolved person in terms of their mental health, they're still going to have difficult days, difficult moments. It's about being able to recognize that that is normal. A lot of the time it's not our fault, and that we can pick ourselves up and we can move on, and the next hour or the next day or the next week can be better, and always having that hope and that knowledge that things won't always be difficult. A huge important part of that, as I say, is about knowing that as humans our brains don't always help us out with self-compassion. Our brains, we get anxiety, we can get low mood. Again, everybody experiences those at some time or another. So some of those are just to do with how our brain has evolved. We get anxious because we have evolved as animals to protect ourselves from threat, and when we experience threats in everyday life, that produces an anxiety response in us, and that's a very biological response. And sometimes we perceive threat when there isn't, like to social threats, for example, like worrying if you've had an argument with a friend, for example, that might cause somebody a lot of anxiety. And it's the same anxiety as if there were a real physical threat. So like a threat to life. So it's about recognizing that our brain sometimes, it doesn't always help us out, and being able to have a compassionate approach to that. It's not my fault how my brain is built. I'm just a human. But I can take a step back and recognize that. And yeah, that's at the heart of the kind of self-compassion approach. So with self-compassion, if you want to work on your self-compassion, you need to come, with a desire to do things differently, because obviously no one's going to change unless they've got that desire to do things a bit differently. Some courage. It takes courage to do things differently, maybe to take some risks. And to know that we all have wisdom, we all have inner wisdom, and we can develop more. I think it's also important to say with self-compassion what it is not. So self-compassion is not feeling sorry for yourself. Self-compassion is not about just going, oh, well, I can't do it, I'm limited, I guess that's that, and giving up. It's not about giving up on your goals. It's not about giving up on self-improvement or your hopes or your values. It's ultimately an empathic position, but it's a hopeful one.
Wow, so amazing. And it's so good to hear you say it like that, because if I think about self-compassion, the first thing I would think would be, yeah, just look in the mirror, say, I love you, you're great, and take a bath today. Remember, feel good about yourself, Alex. You're doing great. And yeah, I think like you mentioned there, it's understanding your deeper reason why you want to do great, or why do you want to make these changes. And that's a really, then it takes the courage and the change. And yeah, oh, that's a great answer. Thank you.
I think sometimes it can be about looking in the mirror and going, you can nail this today, or it's about like that positive self-talk, I guess, and taking care of yourself. You said about having the bath, like those things are definitely a part of it as well. Yeah, so it can be a bit of both.
Yeah, no, but it's good to hear you say it like that. Yeah, so I suppose as well, when I train people, or when they come to train, one of the biggest things, moments in my personal training career, when one of the senior trainers said to me, when you interview someone or give them their first consultation, you need to ask them why are they doing this? Like, why do they want to lose weight? Why do they want to look better? Or why are they turning up to the gym? What's changed, or what is it now that makes them come? So in relation to that, when clients suffer from self-esteem in relation to exercise, what tips, can we help them with reaching their goals or making it more realistic?
Yeah, I think like self-esteem is just a huge issue in relation to exercise, isn't it? Because a lot of people do, I would count myself among this at points in my life, that you come to it from a very negative, low self-esteem, self-critical kind of place. That's the motivator. Often then when you're in the gym, there's a self-critical voice. People can motivate themselves with, come on, like run a bit faster, lose that weight, burn the calories, or might even have a really harsh voice in their head saying, you're fat, or you'll look better, you'll be prettier if you exercise, or, those kinds of things. Maybe things that are really hard to even admit to ourselves that, we can relate to ourselves that way. But I think it's incredibly common. So obviously that's not something you would be talking about in a, every week kind of PT session. But I guess that's, why kind of we've ended up having this discussion to an extent. So from a psychological side, the approach to that is, thinking about how do you relate to yourself? Are you negatively relating to yourself? So we talk about self to self relating. So self to other relating would be, how you relate to a different person. Self to self, how you relate to yourself. And we had critical critical experiences with, you know, parent or at school. You know, being a teenager is a time when a lot of people develop those negative sort of inner voices. They could have been there for a really long time. And this is where self-compassion comes in, because it's hard to break those patterns. You can do it. You can start a more positive self-to-self kind of conversation, but you have to recognize it, go easy on yourself, and notice how it's getting in the way of reaching goals in the gym, or, you know, setting you back, or not always making it feel good. You know, if you do reach a goal, you know, how positive does that feel? Or are you just, or, you know, struggling to recognize it and going, right, well, that's a bit of the way, but that's not very good, I need to get to the next one. You know, can you really stop to appreciate what you've done, appreciate yourself? So things that can really help with that are definitely setting goals in a sensible way. So I know we've talked a bit before about SMART goals. So breaking things down into like a really realistic, targeted manner. I like to work with clients on, you know, drawing out a ladder. So you start at the bottom rung of the ladder, you've got something at the top, and then you're going to work your way up the rungs. And at every step, you're going to be thinking about, where is your self-esteem? You know, how are you approaching that in a compassionate way? How are you motivating yourself to climb the next rung? How are you celebrating when you do climb a rung? How are you, you know, appreciating yourself? So it's like working on goals, but also developing a kind of voice at the same time.
Yeah. That speaks mountains. And it just made me remember when I was in primary school, the head teacher, and I just remember she had in her door like, yes, you can. And I suppose in a way that's personal to me is maybe I took that too far, and you can end up on the overachiever side and you forget to do the celebrating of the wins, appreciating what you've done. And if I'd thought about it in a different way, or when it comes to goal setting for fitness, health, career, any situation, like that ladder, and saying, okay, you know, I've got a little plan of how I'm going to celebrate that, and what am I going to do when I get to that bit? What's after that? And being clear with that. And when it comes to weight loss or body confidence or self-talk, if you're in a very negative headspace right now, it's maybe not going, well, I'm going to lose 2 stone and feel better. It's maybe saying, well, on a day-to-day and week-by-week basis, I'm going to turn up to the gym and notice that I do that self-talk nicer, even only 3 out of 7 days rather than 7 out of 7. So, but it's something that a lot of us don't talk about or know how to. So, that's again really good. So, the next one is like, what is the big link between physical and emotional health? And obviously, on a physical level, it's interesting in the gym where, you know, emotions can feel released, so you can feel extra exhausted, you can get some anger out with some slam balls, you can do some serious lunges, carry some heavy weights and want to cry, laugh, or whatever happens. And why is that?
Yeah, so I think as psychologists, we do get asked this question quite a lot. What is that link between mental health? I just, for me, it always comes down to that fundamental, like your brain, your mind, they are part of your physical self. And I think especially in Western society, but, you know, in modern kind of understandings, we do talk about the brain and the body as though they're separate things. They're one and the same, you know. I'm not like cut off here. I'm all connected. This is as much, you know, part of me as this bit is. So the way that our physical body functions affects the way that our mind functions. I guess an obvious example is, you know, if you've had everyone's had like a cold, and known that when you have a cold, you can just feel really down, and, you know, you can't cope with as much. People get on your nerves more, even people who are trying to be nice to you. I'm awful for that, like a bear with a sore head. You know, someone's trying to look after me, you know, my mum sends me a nice text message and I'm like, yeah. Just that when our physical being suffers, our mental health suffers, and the same the other way around. So people who are experiencing mental health difficulties will feel very different physically. So people who experience low mood will feel physically slowed down, can feel completely exhausted, can find themselves sleeping a lot more, or sometimes sleeping less. But it affects the way that their body functions. Their digestion can change, their appetite can change. It's all just it's one big system, really. So I think the key is to always be thinking about nurturing both. So when you're in the gym, thinking about where is your mental state, where is your your motivation, where is your mood, how are those things feeling, and acknowledging that that when I come into the gym with you, I suppose I'm probably maybe I'm on the overly self-compassionate side, but I'll be like, I've had a really tiring day at work, or I really overdid it in the gym a couple of days ago, so I'm going a bit easy on myself. Like, I know I'm going to be more tired today, and acknowledging that, and trying to use that as part of the session. And sometimes that can be like I use that as a bit of a challenge. Like, okay, I've come in tired today, but I'm going to really try and max effort anyway. But it is a part of the picture. They're absolutely not separate.
Wow. So that would mean that obviously maybe if we are experiencing low mood, if we're experiencing like tiredness, fatigue, stress, like dependent on different levels and different individuals, which would obviously not take, would have to take like one-to-one like counseling and rapport. But would you say that then if you work on your physical fitness, it is likely that your mental health is better?
Yeah, I would imagine so. And I think if I'm not an expert in sort of top like athleticism, but my understanding of watching interviews with top athletes and stuff is that if they don't take their mental health into consideration, they effectively reach a ceiling in their physical training where they can't go any further. Wow. Because you do have to take both things into account.
Wow, that's so, like, do you just reach the ceiling of how far you can get unless you really think about? So wow, like, and if that's for athletes, then like the importance of that being in our day-to-day is massive then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So how do we gauge our mental health? Like, how do we gauge day to day how we're feeling? So all of this is great, but then how do we like track this, or how, like, do I just like have a word with myself in the morning every day? Like, okay, are you tired? Do you need a coffee? Do you need to have breakfast? Like, okay, you're rushing to work, so you're a bit stressed now. Have you got time later? Just acknowledging like that, like you said, morning and night, or lunchtime, or what do you do?
Yeah, I think that process that you're describing just there of just checking in with yourself is a really helpful and healthy process to be in the habit of. I think a lot of us fall into a routine of never really thinking about how we're thinking. So we'll think about what have we got to do today? What's for dinner? What do the kids need? But we won't be thinking, how is my thought process? Am I stressed? Am I rushing through 1,000 to-do lists in my head? And if I am, why am I doing that? What underlies that? What emotions are underneath that? Or what stresses are underneath that? And how can I calm that down? So the process you're describing there is of checking in with yourself, which really is an absolute building block in terms of looking after your mental health. So definitely making time to do that. And you can, we can train ourselves, just like we can train in the gym, we can train ourselves mentally to do that more often. So you suggested just there, like once in the morning, once in the evening, that's a really great place to start. I often suggest to people just taking a scale of 0 to 10, or some people prefer 0 to 100 if they want to have more points on the scale. So 0 would be like feeling the worst you've ever felt, and 10 would be feeling the best you've ever felt, psychologically. And then just rating, where are you? Where am I today? On that 0 to 10. Ideally, we'd want to be around a 5, because 5 is a realistic, it's the really realistic middle point. And obviously we don't want to be on a 0. It's normal to fluctuate through that entire range, but just noticing where you are. If you can do that a couple of times a day, it can start to become more habitual, absolutely. The other thing that a lot of people will have heard about over the last few years is mindfulness, which just means paying attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment. So just saying, where am I right now? What's happening right now? You know, I'm here in my kitchen. It's Wednesday. And, you know, there's a bowl of fruit in front of me. And just, you know, being in the present moment, grounding, this is where I am. And mindfulness is such an important part of checking in, you know, being able to check in with ourselves. Again, it can be a real a gateway for a lot of people actually to improving their mental health. There are a lot of really great apps out there for mindfulness. If it's something that any of your clients are interested in, Headspace is a really good one. Insight Timer is another one. There's loads, but yeah, that's a really good starting point as well.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think the biggest thing you said there, from my mindset of potentially being a bit overachiever with things, is that, oh, like if I want to feel good, I must need to be close to a 10, but actually saying, no, just be close to a 5. Duh. Stop making it so hard for yourself. You're not going to be a 10 every day.
I think that's a really common trap. I think it's a really common trap that we have to be happy all the time. We don't have to be happy. We have to be like average. Average is where you're aiming for. 5 is what you want. You don't need to be a 7 all the time. So because if you're having a day where you're on a 3 and you're like, oh, I need to be a 7, I need to be a 7, right, it's just unachievable. And then that self-critical voice of, oh, why can't I be happier? Why can't I be better at being happy? You know, that's going to come up. And it's not helpful. Whereas if we're aiming for that middle point for 5, maybe that's more doable.
I love that. I think that speaks so much. And yeah, I think it's a great answer and one that I need to take on board. So anyway, it's great, honestly. So, and that I suppose comes down to, again, that inside voice of, oh, could you be better? Like, what did it, like, and sometimes I can fall into the trap of, oh, I didn't get that done today, I've got this to do, I've got that to do. So if I understand now, and because I've been trying to work on it, I'm experiencing overwhelm. So, okay, if I'm experiencing overwhelm, what do I need to do? So I need to do something to calm myself down, sit with the cat, brush the cat, like make, like, I don't know, make a coffee, like really slowly, like put my phone away. And I've tried to get into the habit of putting my phone in airplane as soon as I get in from work. And not because I don't want to speak to my loved ones, but I know that I've overstimulated myself that day, and this is the way that I wind down. So that's in my experience. How do we change that inner critic? Can we be nicer to ourselves inside?
Good news. Yes, you can. You can. It is definitely possible to change your inner critic. I think, you know, some of the things we've already talked about developing that compassionate sort of mindset and compassionate voice, it does take time. And it does involve, you know, letting yourself get in touch with your emotions, letting yourself think in certain situations, you know, how am I reacting? Why am I reacting that way? And sometimes, you know, that can bring up like painful or difficult stuff, confusing stuff. That doesn't mean that you have to go to therapy, I would add. You know, this is the kind of self-reflection that we can all do all the time. For some people, that might lead them to counselling or therapy, but it definitely doesn't mean that you have to go down that path. But there are definitely, you know, with practice, we can get used to talking to ourselves in a kinder way. I think a really nice example of this from the self-compassion approach is that if you just smile, so when you're in kind of just a neutral mood, or, you know, doing this as kind of an exercise, you just sit and you smile for a minute, like you just bring like a a warm look onto your face. So it's normally recommended to do it with your mouth closed. So it's not like a big cheesy grin. It's just like a warm look, as if you were looking kindly on someone else, and just holding that for a minute or two and noticing how it changes how you feel inside. And most people, after doing that for a minute or two, will find that actually they do feel a bit more positive. They feel a bit warmer towards themselves. So that's just like a little short exercise that anyone can do to just think about how, also it's the relationship between the physical body and the mind, going back to that earlier question. But yeah, we can change how we relate to ourselves. We can do that very quickly, but we can also work on it over a longer period of time.
I love that. I think that is a beautiful one. And there's so many out there. Listen to a song and you'll feel good. Put on your favorite pants, your music, but actually, and that's how I feel about fitness. And is if you can strip it back and know how to move your body and look after it without any external objects, then you've nailed it. So I think that exercise of just smiling, not even a big grin, not thinking about over trying, just allowing yourself to slowly feel some emotion is brilliant. So oh, Becca, that's brilliant. Honestly, I have one last cheeky question, if you don't mind. So, have you got any favorite ways that you let yourself do? Like, I suppose for me, for self-compassion or self-care, it can be like sitting down with my pet and relaxing, or journaling, writing down, okay, yeah, this is on my mind, this, instead of just list making, but actually writing, oh yeah, this has happened, so this is what I need to do next to get to the next step. Or taking a bath, like going and seeing my friends and having a meal together and having a laugh. Like, these are ways that like lift my mood and bring me into the now. Like, what's your favorite ways?
Yeah, so I definitely managed my my more difficult, sort of the challenging emotions and my stress by being quite organized and quite boundaried. So I love a list, love a list. I've got my diary for work, it's incredibly organized. I do that very consciously so that I don't have to hold on to those things in my mind. I use calendars and alarms, and the less I have to remember, the more space I have in my mind. And I find that a really important way of, allowing self-compassion, making space and time for myself. If I'm not having to run through, oh, what am I doing tomorrow? I need to hold on to these 5 tasks that I have to do and rehearse them in my head, because we'll do that subconsciously. I can create space for myself, and then I can switch off and I can enjoy my evening, once my tasks for the day are done. So that's one thing that I do. I do try to. I'm a mum, so I've got a little girl who's 16 months, and so I do try to really consciously make time for her, because I do think often, the kids grow up fast, and everyone says you'll look back on it and go, oh, it went by in a flash. So I do try to take just 10 minutes at a minimum where I just literally do nothing else. The temptation to make the dinner, to hang out the washing is there, but I will, when she comes back from nursery, we will just sit and play, and I will just take time to be with her and just be in the moment together. So for me as a mum, that's time for self-care. And like you, I'll try and put my phone aside, not look at it for a while, so that I'll take my watch off so that I'm not getting like buzzing on my wrist when I get messages. And then what do? I enjoy a glass of wine a couple of times a week. I like to have a bubble bath before bed, or a hot shower. I like to change the sheets on the bed regularly, because I love getting into a clean bed. That's like a really special moment for me. And I love cooking, so I'll make time for cooking no matter what's going on. There won't be a week go by where I don't, make time to just have time in the kitchen, because that really matters to me. So yeah, those are just some of the things, I guess, that I do.
Yeah, I love that. Honestly, I think it's so refreshing to hear it be explained from a real clinical perspective. and also just a real person, not just someone on the internet being like, yeah man, just like chill out, do some yoga, like it's all cool, like which there is a lot of, and there's a lot of that out there, and it can get exhausting and overwhelming to choose to like hunt through and choose.
I know.
And
that's me sat on my glass of wine, sat on the sofa with my glass of wine, thinking I could be doing some yoga right now. I'm going to have my wine instead.
Yeah. I think you've nailed it. I think it's made a good choice. You would have been like 1,000 YouTube videos in. Honestly, yeah, no, it's really great, Becca, and I know that you're going to be putting up some events soon, so I'm looking forward to hearing those, link those in a follow-up in this, and probably below when I upload it to YouTube as well. So yeah, look out for that, guys, and thank you so much, Becca, for taking time today.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great to chat.
Oh, love it. Right, I'll speak to you soon.
Okay.